Hello and welcome everyone to Golden Thread's first event of No Summary. This is a live stream series of conversations with artists that don't fit in a box. No Summary essentially means our identities and our work are too complicated to to fit in one box. And I'm really delighted to begin this session with Naghmeh Samini. I will just take a moment to say, for those who don't know, Golden Thread is the first American theater company focused on the Middle East. We are based in San Francisco, and we are now obviously sheltering in place, and because of COVID-19, we are producing these digital programming, which we actually hope to continue onward. So I'm delighted to welcome Naghmeh Samini, Iranian playwright, to be our first guest for No Summary. Naghmeh Jan, how are you?
Hi, Tehran Jan. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy that I'm here, and I'm ready to discuss you about all the background of the play and everything. And I'm so happy that you made this fantastic production of my play. I'm really proud of you and your group that you just try to fight with Corona in a very unusual way, because I remember that we had this plan to produce this play for the stage, but because of the Corona, we couldn't do that. So I think you did great job, and I really appreciate.
Thank you. And just to provide some background to our audience, Naghmeh is referring to the radio play of The Language of Wild Berries, which is a play of hers, one of the most recent plays that Golden Thread was originally planning to stage this fall. And because we weren't able to do that, we produced it as a radio play, and we'll talk more about that. But let's begin with you and your background, Naghmeh Jan. Tell us a little bit about, your childhood and how you began your theater work.
Sure, Tehran Jan. Actually, I was born in Iran. I was born in Tehran. I think it doesn't need to mention the year, but it's easy to find it. It's actually 1973. And then I just completed all my education process in Iran. I got my BA in drama and MA in cinema, both from University of Tehran. And then I got my PhD from another university, again a university in Tehran, in mythology and drama.
Mythology.
Exactly, mythology and drama. So then it's about after getting my PhD, I seriously and professionally started to work in both theater and cinema, but my main focus was in theater, writing for theater.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because so many people are not aware that there's actually professional theater exists in Iran, and how active it is, and also how active women artists are in Iran. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about how you create a theater production in Tehran? What is that process like?
Okay, so actually it's like all over the world. I also have heard from many of my non-Iranian friends that they have no idea about how theater goes on in Iran. But I have to say that it's very powerful and very, serious media in Iran. And just as an example, I want the audience know that every night, I mean, actually in pre-corona period, every night you could find over 100 performances in a city like Tehran. So it means that theater is a very live art in a city like Tehran. So I know that even in the city now I am in, like Seattle, you never can find 100 performances every night to choose in between. So the process of making theater is just like all over the world. First, you need to find the text. So, I mean, the first step is producing the text, and then a director and producer with together find the text and try to make it produced for the stage. I think it's as, I mean, when I was trying to get familiar with what happened in United States, for example, when I started to work with you and your company, I understood that there is no big difference in between the process of producing theater or a play in Iran and in United States and all over the world.
Mm-hmm. So as a playwright, let's say you finish a play, and then what do you do with it afterwards? Do you immediately publish it? Do you go to a director and say, hey, I want you to read this? Or do you go to theater companies? Like, what is that process like?
Okay, so I just explained my own experience, but I'm sure that the other playwrights' experience should be or may be different. But mine is that I used to work with some directors through years. So there are like 4 or 5 directors that I can trust them, and I used to work with them. So they always ask me about a new play, and I always I'm thinking about them. And when I write a play, I always think about, okay, this one is fit him or her. So so for me, as a playwright who has this like 20 years career behind, now I know some directors who interested in my works and who I can trust them. So it's not very difficult to find directors. And sometimes some producers and some unfamiliar companies just call me to ask about my new work to make them produced. So this is my experience, but I know that this is not as easy for young playwrights. That would be much more difficult for them to find their own director and let their play produced. But anyway, this is the process. It takes years actually to find your matching producers and companies and directors.
Yeah, to build relationships with artistic collaborators that you trust, who know your work and are eager to produce your work.
Exactly.
I know I'm one of them. So I also wanted to ask a little bit more in detail. I know that, for example, something that's different in Iran is that before a play can be produced or published, it needs to go through an approval process. Can you talk about that for us a little bit?
Okay, yeah, that is something I know that that is something very unusual for people who are working in theater in any country but Iran. So yes, the play should be read by some kinds of censors, and that they give you your own ideas, and you have to think about the ideas and maybe change some part of the play. But the point is that Iran is a very complicated country, and you never can follow anything in Iran just with one formula. So yeah, I mean, in a very, very surface of this story, there are some censors and some writers, and they give their own ideas, and we need to change. But it's not true. I mean, we get censors' ideas, and we try to change it in the way that we want to make them happy and at the same time keep our main idea. So I can say that in 20 years that I worked in theater, what I remember is a kind of eternal fight in between censors and writers. So through these years, now it seems that we know how to avoid red lines.
Right.
We grow up with censorship, but now I think this obstacle can be solved by our creative ideas. That is what happened in cinema, in theater, in painting, and everything. And it is why that we still can work.
It's probably worth explaining that in Iran there is a Ministry of Culture, correct?
Yeah, that's
and
true.
that there is an Office of Theater or Dramatic Arts. And within that Office of Dramatic Arts, there is like a censorship committee or a review committee. So these are government employees that essentially review the work and then issue, as you said, redline the text and issue, I guess they call it recommendations, but but what's surprising, I know when yeah, go ahead.
No, go on. Sorry, I just thought that you are changing the point. Okay.
No. I just wanted to say that knowing that one might expect a very sterile theater, theater that doesn't discuss social issues or political topics, and that is actually not the case in Iran. I can say that when I saw theater in Tehran, I was blown away by how, I don't even want to say brave because that seems small, but how directly artists tackled political and social issues and talked about topics from political reform or where is my vote to social issues like addiction and homelessness and I mean, it was everywhere. And I think that's partly maybe why I also felt that the theater audience in Tehran, at least, was so invested in the performance, right? So once you watch a performance, the theater is packed. There are all kinds of different people in the theater, diverse age groups, from the look of it, diverse income levels, some who are more conservatively dressed and some who aren't. So a very mixed audience. And then after the performance, it's like everybody goes to the cafes around the theaters and for hours discusses the content of the play. And it just blew me away how invested everyone seemed in whatever the themes were that were discussed in the play. Do you want to, has that happened to you? I know in your work, you often deal with history, you deal with relationships, and you deal with political issues in very interesting ways, which we'll get to talk about. But have you had that experience where audience members come and discuss the themes of the play with you with passion?
Toranjan, you are very right. It's unbelievable. Theater audience in Iran is a phenomena. Actually, I haven't seen something like that anywhere else, actually, because as you rightly mentioned, you can find a diversity of audience, young, old, educated, non-educated, any kind of people. And when I say that there are or there used to be more than 100 performances on the stage, I'm speaking about full full theaters. I'm speaking about, I mean, kind of great reception for all these productions. So yeah, that is very, very interesting. And I mean, for years I was thinking about this phenomena, and the answer I found is that maybe because in Iran, somehow theater, I mean, watching theater or attending in theater is kind of both entertainment and political slash cultural activity. So I think it reminded me like old Greek theater, which was just like that, both entertainment and cultural, social, even political activity just intertwined together. And people who attend in theater both feel like they are going to be entertained and at the same time to have a kind of political cultural activity. And it's why that, as you rightly mentioned, once the play finish and they just leave the theater, they really want to continue what they watched in cafeterias or in their own home, because they feel that they did something and they really want to talk about.
And I think one of the misconceptions also about Iranian society is the role of women, right? I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that majority of university graduates are women. Is that still the case?
60%.
And so many women artists and business owners, very active in society, very bossy in my experience. How has your experience as a woman been in being involved in theater production and also film production?
Okay, that's a very good question. If I say that was easy and piece of cake and it was like the experience, just like the experience of a male writer could have, it's not true. Okay, as a woman in a kind of traditional society like Iran, that's not easy to find your way. Sometimes you need to struggle with so many obstacles, from your family to the government. So there are many obstacles. I actually, in my own personal experience, I was very lucky. I grew up in a kind of Middle East educated family, and my father was kind of very open-minded person. So when I was like 16, and I told him that, okay, I want to be in theater and I want to do something in theater. And at that time, I was not sure that whether I want to be an actress or writer or what. But anyway, so he told me that, okay, of course, this is your life and it's your way and I'm proud of you. Okay, do whatever you want. So, and I need to say that he was exceptional. In compare with the other parents of my other friends, that they really wanted their daughters to be a doctor or an engineer. So there was just two frames for us. But anyway, like generally, your idea about women in Iran is very true. Maybe being in cinema or theater for a woman is not easy, but being a doctor or being somebody in society, especially in big cities like Tehran, is not difficult. It is something that family push their daughter to have their own education and do something. But I personally was so lucky. My family really, really encouraged me. And then actually, yes, as a woman, it was not easy to make people trust my mind. You know, they could accept me as an actress much easier than as a writer.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because as an actress, they need
trust
me.
Your brain. They can trust your brain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, I think that actors should be so wise and smart, and they mostly are. But the point is that for a theater production, you need actresses, but you don't need a female writer. So maybe sometimes you prefer to have a male writer because you can trust to male brain more than female brain.
Yeah.
But I try to summarize my answer with saying that, okay, my main struggle was to make them trust to a female brain as a playwright and as a scriptwriter.
Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say that that's not that different from the US. I think that may be a global issue that women struggle with.
Oh, it's so tragic, actually.
Yeah.
It means that, okay, but Turanjan, I always say to my students that, okay, don't be discouraged, because by remembering that it is just about 100 years, more or less, that we started to be in society as writer, as social activist, and anything as a woman. So I think we have a very long way in front.
Okay, so you sound hopeful.
I'm hopeful.
Okay, great. I want to just mention that the two of us, we met in Iran while I was visiting there, and I had the good fortune of reading some of your plays in Persian there, and I knew that I wanted to translate them and hopefully direct them. So last year, when I was looking for an Iranian play to include in our 2020 season, you were one of the playwrights that I reached out to. And we met at a cafe in Seattle while you were in Seattle, and we talked, and I said, oh, I'm looking for a play that is about everyday life in Iran. And then you just took out your play and handed it to me. And I read it, I think that same day, and called you and said, yes, this is the play. It was almost magical and miraculous, but it happened so easily. So the play is called The Language of Wild Berries. And Golden Thread Productions has produced it as a radio play. Our audience, I invite you to go to our website. You'll find the link to the podcast. And if you haven't yet, please listen to it. It's a beautiful play. It's about a couple, yes? It's about a couple who every year they have a ritual on their anniversary. They take the same trip to the same town by the Caspian Sea. And you tell us the story. How do you?
Okay, I want to tell this story in a way that
doesn't give it away.
Just exactly, because that is my question. Can people hear to the radio play after this meeting, this reception?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think many will, hopefully.
Yeah, great. So I want to tell the story in a way not to spoil yes. And not to ruin the dramatic point. So as you rightly mentioned, this is about a couple who are going to north of Iran to completing their divorce process. So they are on the way of separation.
Yeah. So this is their 10th anniversary, and they're preparing to get a divorce.
Exactly, that's true. And somebody is actually tracing them. Is that the right word? Tracing or chasing them. Or following them. Yeah. And he is so suspicious. And if at the beginning it seems that he is going to kill them for some reasons, for some political reasons or something like that. But when play goes further and further, something more unusual and mysterious reveals through the story. So, and at the end, there is a there is a kind of shock, I think, for the audience. I really like the ending of this play. Yeah, it's a twist, actually. The main twist happens in the end of the play. So I think this is the story. This is the main line of the story, in the way that people, I mean, I really tried not to spoil the story for the audience.
Yes, you did a good job. What was it like to hear the play in English?
Oh, very interesting, very complicating feeling. You know, as you know, my play been translated to different languages like Spanish, French, German, and recently Italian. And I have heard some of the play readings in different languages of my own play, and I didn't have any feeling because I couldn't understand.
Response.
Exactly.
Emotional response.
Yeah, I just was happy that my child stepped in different culture.
Yes.
It was just like that, and I didn't have any emotional feeling about what happened because I couldn't understand this. But at this time, especially when I listened to the play you directed, I felt I had so many complicated feelings, and I was so emotional. First of all, I felt that no, the play has two writers, it's me, and secondly, you. And I really I need to appreciate your great job for translating this play.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that how you were sensitive about each word. I know that because you were talking with me for any words and any translations and what you chose for any word. But what I felt firstly was how the play now has two mothers, not just one. And you know, it was something very close to me and at the same time very far. Yes. So it was very interesting, complicated, great, fabulous feeling.
Thank you. You're very generous. Thank you. I can say that the process of translating this play was, first of all, a pleasure because it's so well written. But obviously, as you begin the translation process, you have to make choices, and this is such a layered play, and there are so many hidden meanings. So I wanted to do justice to the many layers of the play, and I think that's where the challenges were, and some of the choices had to be made. And I'm glad to hear that you don't feel like any significant meaning was lost.
Not at all. No, not at all. No.
That's great. Yeah, it's interesting to, I do think, you know, as someone who you kind of lives in both languages, both in Persian and in English, it is a different story, right? It's the same story, but in a way, it lives differently depending on the language. So that's an interesting experience, I think, to hear it. So now I can't wait to see a production in Persian. It'll be fun. So talk a little bit about the themes of the play. I know language, speaking of translation and the power of language, I know language is a major theme in the play. Talk a little bit about, and your own background, obviously, in mythology, you've kind of centered the myth of the Tower of Babel and the confusion of languages. It plays a central role in the play, and one character is working on his PhD on ancient languages. The other character teaches English in Tehran. So talk a little bit about why language plays, why were you drawn to making it such a big part of this play?
Actually, Toranjan, as you said, there are so many different layers in the play. So, and for me, as the writer of this play, maybe it's not very easy to talk about all these layers and all these themes. And I think that maybe audience can find even more ideas in the play that I ever thought about. So, but anyway, when I was thinking about that play and when I was in the process of writing the play, the first thing I was thinking was that how a generation lose the language and the communication in personal way and in political, I mean, situation, both of them. So then let me tell you that I tried, I mean, my main challenge in this play was to show how personal problem or personal matters related to political condition and mythological background. So, you know, as a person from Iran, this is my own experience that how in every single moment, my personal issues are intertwined with political situation of my country and at the same time with the mythological background, because as you know, Iran has a very long history and very, I mean, rich mythological source. So it seems that we are in between these two, you know, 2 points. From our backside, we are related to a mythological and historical background, and and from other side, we are very related to political situation of our country. So in a country like Iran, anything is political. I have to mention this. Anything. I mean, drinking water is also political. Anything is political. So in the play, I tried to find a way to show how this couple and how their own very personal problem intertwined with their history and the politic of the country.
It's really interesting what you say, because I think it really resonates with where the US is today, right? We are now experiencing our history, right? Our history of slavery and the genocide of indigenous population of this country catching up with us, and we are forced to face it, and it is impacting our daily lives. So these issues of social justice, whether they are on a national level or a personal level, are, like you say, intertwined, particularly for the Black population, the Latino population, but also for all of us immigrants in the US. We've become politicized. Our lives are now politicized, right? So our personal choices have political ramification and political meaning, which is, you know, what you're describing, and I think what happens in your play, The Language of Wild Berries. Similarly, the issue of divorce, the way you tackle it in the play, right? It's a very personal experience, right? But then you give us this very very thoughtful, profound political analysis of divorce, and I think it goes in parallel with language. You know, like how language. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, talk about divorce from a personal issue to a political issue.
Yeah, actually, I got this idea from my own life. Let's confess. Yeah, because okay, let's say when I wrote the first draft, it was before I get my divorce. I mean, yeah, so like 5 years ago when I wrote or maybe 6 years ago when I wrote the first draft, it was before my divorce. And I didn't like the play at all. I knew that something missing in the play, something is not real. I didn't have this experience. So afterward, after tragically I got my divorce, then I came back to the play and I tried to rewrite it. And I found lots of things in the play that I missed in the first draft. And I got all of them from my own experience. For example, there is a line in a play that you perfectly translated it. So it's why that I wrote the line, because I don't want to ruin your translation by my own. So it is something like you sleeping in a highway and memories drive over you the speed of 120. So that is exactly what I experienced after my divorce. I really felt that all the memories are drawing over me in a very speedy way. So yes, so that is my personal life. And at the same time, I was experiencing green movement in Iran, which was a very effective movement. It didn't affect on government directly, but it affected every single moment of our life afterward, seriously.
Yeah,
so
you mean it impacted, it changed.
Exactly. Yeah, that is true. So actually, when I was rewriting the play, I tried to get ideas from these two different sources. The one was very personal, which was my divorce, my own divorce, and the other one was so a general political source, which was green movement and what happened at that time in my country.
Yeah, there is a speech in the play, and that really opens that up and in a way presents us with a thesis of how a large social or political movement impacts personal lives. With that note, I want to actually open up the conversation to our actors. I think we are joined by Abraham Makani, who played the part of Davud in The Language of Wild Berries, and Sal Matos, who played the part of Daniel. Hi, welcome, both of you. And Mona, do you want to join us? Mona Kasra, who is part of the production, the original production, as projection designer, but she definitely stayed on and supported the process for the radio play. So welcome to all of you. I want to open it up to your questions for Naghmeh.
Sorry, I turned off my phone, my microphone. I thought that, okay, it's finished with me.
You're not done, Naghmeh.
No, not yet.
Well, actually, let me, Sal and Abe and Mona, let's give Naghmeh a quick break. Let me ask you, what was the experience of being a part of this radio play? What was that experience for you in terms of being a part of this play, you know? Playing the part of Iranians or being in that environment. What was that like? Abe, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. You know, I really loved the piece. I, was lucky enough to, know you from, working in the Bay Area before at Marin Theater Company doing Noura with Danmo, who was the other lead in this piece. And I mean, obviously I definitely wanted to do it live, that would have been amazing. But the fact that you all were able to create this scenario where we could do it from anywhere in the country. I mean, they sent us mics and the headset, and we recorded it, you know, on Zoom essentially and another platform. And it was, I mean, it was awesome to experience it in a different way, you know, where we really had to listen to each other, you know, only from our voices and not really see each other and feel each other. But yeah, I mean, the piece is like a dream-like, you know, I don't know, it's like it just felt like a dream, but it really encompasses what I feel it is to be in a couple, you know, you go through these ups and downs, and it's really beautifully put together. So yeah, I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Sal.
Yeah, the play is beautiful. I remember when I first read it before auditioning, and just imagining, you know, what it would be like to sort of see it on stage, and, you know, fingers crossed, hopefully one day we can make that happen. And the thing that was interesting for me was playing Daniel, again, not to trying to avoid spoilers, but Daniel kind of exists in this very, the whole play is kind of in this going back and forth between memory and the present. And Daniel kind of breaks the rules, and he kind of addresses the audience, and he kind of exists in his own sort of reality sometimes. And so that was kind of actually interesting to play remotely, because there were times where there is that distance between the characters, even though on stage he's right there with them, he's not seen, or he's, you know, there's something sort of magical and theatery about it. So that was kind of interesting, playing from afar and trying to find those moments of connection, like Abe was mentioning, and then being able to kind of relish in those moments of disconnection as Daniel. It actually kind of benefited, I think, the character a little bit in this sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mona, how about you? You're Iranian.
Absolutely.
What was it like
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, this I from the beginning when we started talking to Tehran, which seems like it was age ago, right before pandemic and all of that, and we were so excited to stage this piece. I left Iran like about a couple of decades ago, but like the road that this play takes place, it's just, it brings up a lot of memories. And also I love the context of this really winding road and this notion of memory and the challenges that this couple is going through socially and also personally. The play with public privates, that they, you know, what they do, what they talk about together. So it just, it really resonated so much. And I love Naghmeh's work. She definitely thinks also very visually, I think. And I was so excited about making this happen, like bringing this, staging this, and you know, be able to just really share this beautiful piece with the American participants or outside Iran. But the pandemic happened, and you know, we were trying to really make it happen. And but I'm so glad the radio play went along. It's really beautiful. It captures, I think, the emotions and the meaning so well. I still remain helpful that we're gonna at some point, Tehran is gonna do this once things are back in normal. But it was just an amazing experience, just being part of the group and just talking to everyone. It's a wonderful, wonderful script.
Do you have any questions for Naghmeh at all?
I feel like since we had that longer conversation there, I'm wondering if, Naghmeh, you think of this also as a film. Do you see this becoming like an actual, like a screenplay at some point?
I had actually thought that as well when I was reading it, that it would make a beautiful film as well as a play.
Okay, so the good news is that a friend of mine who is a filmmaker and who lives in California, but now she's in Syracuse University, maybe you have heard about her, Suda Bemuradian. She is working on this play to make it script. I memean, we are working together actually. But at the beginning, Mona, that is really interesting point that you mentioned. I have heard, actually at that time, I had heard a lot about road movies, but not play, I mean, road theater or road play. So, but at that time, I was thinking that how I can just make a new way to show that we in theater, we also can have a kind of road journey to show how character reacts to this, this new situation out of their home. My plays, before writing the language of wild berries, were happened mostly in a private kind of homey place. But it was the first time I tried to write something outside of the home. Mm-hmm. And you know, as the title of the play shows, I was very under the inspiration of the movie by Ingmar Bergman called Wild Strawberries. So yeah, actually at the beginning I was thinking about cinema, but in a opposite way, how I can borrow something from cinema for the theater. We always do the opposite way, borrowing from theater to cinema. But now I thought I tried to do something different. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it just and the visual thinking of, you know, the way the environments they're in and the way you talk about that, I just find that really wonderful. Thank you. I have to say, Torrance did such a beautiful job translating this, because I read the Farsi script first, and then when I read the translation, it was like really captured the context, and sometimes our words mean different in Farsi and what we were trying to say, and you really captured it, Torrance. I don't know how hard that must have been. I'm sure it's not easy.
It was a pleasure, I have to say. Translation is such a, it's like you go on a journey, you know, I mean, I'm a playwright also, so I really respect the word of the playwright. I really understand that nothing is accidental in a play. And so I try to dig deeper and deeper to understand tone, repetition, you know, all of these choices, because they're not, you know, they're not accidental. Something that you mentioned, Naghmeh, reminded me that I've read two of your other plays, and you're right that they both happen in a house. The characters do not leave. And it's interesting just to look at your own work, and does it feel like with the language of wild berries, you've left home? Does it? Because now you're like on the road, right?
Yeah, maybe it's why, because I wrote the play in Seattle, and at that time I didn't feel Seattle as my home, you know. So that was the first time I completed a play outside of Iran and outside of my own home. But that is true. My very recent play, I'm rewriting this play, is again, it is not happened in a home. It's outside of the home, and it's somewhere very mysterious. I'm not going to talk about that, but that is true. I you know, for me, home is part of our identity, and I wanted to put this couple out of their regular identity. So that is what I trying to do with putting them outside of their own, you know, your, how do you call it, immune zone or safe zone?
Your safe zone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I really wanted to put them out of their own safe zone to see how they react and how their behavior change.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think we do behave differently inside the house as opposed to outside, right? That is a thing. And I just, as an observer, I find it interesting that while you were mainly living in Iran, your plays took place inside the house. And now that you've become more of an immigrant,
exactly,
they're happening outside the house.
Yeah, that's true.
So when I write an article analyzing your career, I'm gonna talk about that.
That's great. That's so dead on.
Please do. Yeah. I would love to read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Toranjan, I am very amateur immigrant. I'm very amateur immigrant, I have to say. It's just about 1.5 years, I really decided to come out from the country. But I need to say that for us as a people who immigrate from our root and our own country, home is a very big issue, I think. Home is I mean, we always have this question that where is our home? Where is our home? And so even when you write a play outside of the home, still you are thinking about home.
Yes, yes, yes. I think it's interesting because when I'm, yeah, it's like belonging, home and belonging. These are the constant topics that we tackle as immigrants. One of our audience members has asked a question about dramaturgy. I know that for the radio play, we did some dramaturgy, and Mona, you supported this process also. Do you want to talk a little bit about your presentation?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many contextual aspects to the play that we were trying to, and also like if your audience is, I think, Iranian, perhaps they would have certain understandings of, you know, the location even that this happens, or would this road to the north of Iran mean, or how does that work? What the green movements, like that's such a signifier for the newer generations, especially back in Iran. So like, how do you translate that, or how do you give that context? And, you know, I'm a visual person, so I just try to create a bundle of giving context visually, then how does it living in Tehran even mean? Because a lot of our understanding, especially outside, like from the West, is the news media and how we think of certain countries in a particular way. So we hope that, like, I guess that those images, that kind of dramaturgy called visual dramaturgy, just helps giving those type of context a little bit more connection with what is happening really in the play and what is this couple talking about really.
And one of the things that I think is interesting in terms of producing or directing and, you know, a radio play or working only with audio, right? Like the only source of communication is audio. So it's an interesting challenge to how much can you convey with audio. And, you know, we had a brilliant sound designer, James Ard, who introduced so many layers of sound and really helped build the various moments and the various environments. But even in terms of working with actors, you know, how it was a challenge for me, and I'm curious, Abe and Sal, how you felt. But there were times that I felt like I was pushing you to exaggerate, right? Because I felt like otherwise the moment wouldn't come across. How did it feel for you?
I mean, I got to say, those moments were difficult for sure, because you know, you have the vision as the director, but for us over here, and we kind of have an idea, you know, since we're not able to really be there in the room with each other, it's kind of hard to really see the moment the way, you know, that it's gonna, like, after hearing it, you kind of realize, wow, I didn't even know that moment was gonna be like that quick, or that sound was gonna affect this moment in a way that, you know, we didn't when we were, you know, recording it. So yeah, it's just, I mean, I trusted you though. I knew that it was gonna, you know, be something beautiful, but in the moment you can't really see it because, you know, we didn't have as much time to really delve into the work like we would if we were in the rehearsal process for a play. So it was much more like a film in that way, where sometimes you get a director that's able to kind of give you, you know, the leeway to really delve into the role, and sometimes you just show up and are expected to create, you know, an Oscar award-winning moment. So so it was difficult, but you know, that's the beautiful challenge of these times and you know, this art form. So I enjoyed it either way.
Yeah. How about you, Sal?
Yeah, it was definitely challenging in the sense that same, I like to get in the room. I like to, you know, feel the vibe of the energy and the stage and, you know, what you're wearing, how you're I'm a very like movement. I like to move around. And so, which I'm sure you guys saw when we were recording, sometimes my hands would just be like going all over the place while I was talking. And then just remembering like those things that I would sometimes use to convey emotion, whether it's my eyes, whether it's my hands, those aren't going to be on the other side of what the audience in this version are going to see or hear. And so it was actually really interesting listening to the play yesterday. And I think the emotions came through, but I do think there were those times where you were like, just take it, like, be really, really happy. Just like be as happy as possible when you deliver this monologue. And I, you know, and I felt like I was going like over the top with like over inflecting. But then when I hear it, I'm like, oh no, it actually, in terms of just the audio, it got us where we needed to go. But of course, in the moment, I felt like I feel like a clown, you know, like laughing and like doing too much. But I think it ended up working. And yeah, I have to second the shout out to James. Some of the audio things, especially for Daniel's, I have a bunch of monologues, and there were these kind of mysterious musical scores and sound effects that were coming in and out, and it really like transported the piece in a way that I was surprised by. Like I was thinking I'm going to hear the same thing that I've been hearing for every day that we recorded, and I even for my own parts, I felt like I was transported. So it was really cool to see how those things can kind of like add to the magic.
Yeah, we should mention that that original music is composed by Mohammad Talani, who's one of our local musicians and composers here in the Bay Area, and a Golden Thread resident artist. So we're very proud of his work. It's really beautiful work. Yeah, and it's based on an idea, Naghmeh, that you gave. Remember, we talked about music, and you said, what if we take the traditional wedding song of Bada Bada Mubarak Bada and create these other variations? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I was, when I first listened to the radio play, I was so surprised how he used this theme and this motif as the main idea of the music. And I really love this, especially, you know, at the beginning, we hear something based on this theme, and at the ending, you can hear the whole song in the background. So I really like this way. I think there is kind of my piano teacher years ago told me that actually this music is very, very sad one. It's for celebration of marriage. But if you try to sing it slowly, you feel that's how you feel that how sad it is. Listen, la 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 la. You see how sad is this?
It's very bluesy.
Exactly. So how it can be the song of the song of the celebration of marriage. So it's why that I gave you this idea, and I think you and he as the musician used this much better than what I thought.
It's all his. Yeah, I just gave him that idea, and he said, "Oh, interesting." And then 2 weeks later, you know, he gave us this amazing compositions, and we actually just used the fraction of what he has composed. So I'm hoping that he will, you know, one day issue an album just on variations of Bada Bada Mubarak Bada. It'll be really interesting. Naghmeh, what is, because you've worked both in cinema and theater in Iran, how is it different? Are you as involved in the production of cinema, or do you stay away?
Toranjan, can you can I ask you to ask the question again, because there was something happened in my internet?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Just curious
yeah.
about the difference between working on a cinema production and theater, and how involved you are. I'm assuming with a theater production, you stay pretty involved. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Actually, there is a huge difference. As a playwright, I feel very powerful in the process of the production. You
Of a
know, I
theater
feel
play. Mm-hmm.
exactly in a theater play, exactly. But in cinema, I feel that I'm the second person, not the first person. You know, so yeah, because you know, you never are as involved as practitioners, as a playwright, when you are working in cinema. You know, I mean, I always give my script to the people who are working on that movie or series, and then afterward, like a year later, I can see the result. So actually, I'm not. I am not involved with the process of filming my script, but in the process of producing a play, I'm always one of the first references. So actually, that is much more joyful. Sometimes it's much more joyful.
Which one?
Writing for a theater, of course. Because you know, this is I feel more as a writer than when I write for cinema or for series. I feel more, I more identify myself as a writer when I write for theater rather than cinema or series. But actually, I mean, that is completely different file. I also love to write for them, and sometimes I really need I actually economically I very depend on that.
Yes.
You see, yes. And I really I sometimes I really try to inspire myself by my own experiences in theater to write for cinema and series. So theater always been the main source of my inspiration. So okay, that is the answer.
We should mention that you are the writer of one of the most popular TV series in Iran, Shahrzad. Will you tell us a little bit about that TV series?
Yeah, actually, that was super popular, both for Iranians who live in Iran and Iranians who doesn't live in Iran and who live in United States, for example. So I started to write that series like maybe 5-6 years ago. And actually, Shahrzad changed my life because before writing Shahrzad, I was mostly actually known as a playwright and not a scriptwriter. And then afterward, I suddenly was known as a series writer, and I got super famous. And it was very unusual experience for me. I mean, let tell you something funny about my experience in Iran. When I was in Iran, before writing the Shahrzad, I just like other people need to stay behind any line for getting visa in embassy or anything. I mean, some other lines. But after writing Shahrzad, I had this experience that I was known. So people came to me to say, "Oh, you are the writer of Shahrzad. Please don't stay in the line. You can come. You can skip the line." So it was, yeah. But it was, I mean, yeah, writing Shahrzad was a great experience for me to know how we can talk to a majority of people. What I think not easy to do with theater. So theater is kind of the source of art, the source of experience. And for me, writing a series, beside the economical issues, is a way to talk with so many people
To
at the same
masses,
time.
yeah.
And I think it was, yeah, exactly, talk to masses, and it was so precious for me.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Abe.
I'm sorry, for Naghmeh Jun.
Please.
With this piece, you know, I guess in my view of the Iranian like censor, you know, that they have in Iran, how did you kind of I don't want to say get away. I feel like there's a fine line maybe with the work. I don't want, without giving too much away. But you know, certain political aspects of it, and maybe, you know, the things that go on in a relationship, you know, are touched upon in this piece. And in my mindset as an Iranian American, you know, you have this idea that the Iranian, you know, government doesn't want to portray themselves in that way, or even touch upon, you know, things that are talked about in this piece. So how did you manage that?
I'm not sure that I could understand your question. Can I ask you to explain a little bit more about that?
Let me explain that.
Sure.
It's the same question we talked about before, that there are themes in the play that seem overtly political, or even the intimate relationship of a couple that are in the play that one would not expect would be allowed in Iran. So how did you manage it?
Okay, so first let me give you a general answer, and that I forget to say when when we were talking about censorship. Actually, there are two important points about censorship in theater in Iran. First one is that censor, I mean, it is differ from censor to censor how to censor a text. Does it make sense? You know,
Yeah.
It really, I mean, there is no law. There is no law. You never have one red line that you know that. Red lines are so floating.
They're very subjective.
It's very subjective.
Based
exactly.
on who's reviewing.
That's very true. That's very true. So, I mean, it has some, it's good somehow, because you can do whatever you want and then tell that, okay, I didn't know that it is something I didn't, I wasn't allowed to write, for example. But the downside is that, okay, you never know where you are, behind the red line or the other side of the red line. So, but anyway, so censors are different. That is the first point. And the other point is that, okay, the censorship, how can I say? The censorship applies for cinema and for TV series. It is very different from what happened in theater. In theater, it's much lighter, I have to say.
They're much more lenient in theater.
Yeah, exactly. It's uncomparable. You can't compare the censorship in, for example, TV and what happened in theater. So for us as playwrights, it's much easier to write what we think and what we want to express. But in this single play, The Language of Wild Berries, I knew that I will have some challenges with censorship, because I was writing about something like Green Movement and those political situation of Iran. But fortunately, I didn't face any serious censor in Iran. I hope not after this conversation. You know, I need to be a little bit careful, and I need to make a good choice of my words, not to be in danger after this conversation, but it's joking. But, you know, because, you know, most of the censors got this play as a family play, you know, and I think they kindly tried to skip those political layers of the play. So I could publish the play, and I could make the play staged for over 1 month. and just besides some lines, I didn't change anything when I was working on this play. And I think partly it was because when I was writing the play, I knew that how I can avoid the red lines, not to be in danger.
Gotcha. Okay.
I remember one of the playwrights told me a story about censorship, that the censors had an issue with a particular play, with a particular word that he used in his play. I don't know, let's say elevator as an example. And they asked him to change that word. And so he changed it to a number, to like number 4. So wherever the word elevator showed up in the play, he changed it to the number 4, and then it was published that way. So like there's no logic or attempt at meaning or anything like that. It's a little arbitrary, is my understanding.
The Toranjan, the funny thing is that I know that playwright, and I know the trick he applied in his plays. But the interesting thing is that if I remember correctly, after years, number 4 was in the list of censorship.
They caught on.
Yeah.
Nobody can use the number 4.
No, 5 is okay. 3 is okay, but no 4. 4.5 is.
Yeah. Abe, I have a question for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your theater career as an Iranian American? How has it been? Are you often cast as in a Middle Eastern part, or is that rare, or how is it?
No, I'm definitely cast as Middle Eastern. You know, I think
not Latino.
I'm as you know, I am a half Latino, half Persian, and I'm fluent in Spanish. Speak very little Farsi. Father never really taught me. I'm not mad at him.
We'll change that. Don't worry.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, the industry, for better or worse, how it has been, has seen me as Middle Eastern. And so the plays that I've done and you know, the film and TV stuff, I've had stuff where I'm able to, like, you know, play a piece that has nothing to do with that. But generally I do play mostly Middle Eastern. Yeah. And but you know, who else should tell those stories? I mean, I'm happy to tell those stories, you know, especially one like this, or you know, like the piece we did at Marin Theater Company. I mean, I think it was a beautiful story. So,
and that's Noura. That play is Naghmeh. If you come across it, it'd be worth seeing. Noura by Heather Raffo is a beautiful play. Abe, do you feel like there are parts that you audition for that you think you would be perfect for but never get cast?
Yeah, like it was 99% of the time. But you know, that's the name of the game. It's persistence and perseverance over those kind of moments.
Yeah. How about you, Sal? What has your theater career been like?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. It's kind of a bit of an inversion, I would say, of Abe's in a lot of ways. I get put in the ethnically ambiguous box where they're like, we don't know what you are, and so we kind of just cast you as whatever is around. But that does tend to mean rarely is it leading parts. And it's usually more side characters, which I'm happy to do. They're usually more fun. But it's funny. I'm personally half Filipino, and I primarily identify as Filipino. And I have not once in my career, I've been acting since I was 15. So in 15 years, I have not once played a character that was explicitly written as a Filipino character. But I've played many roles. So it's kind of, you know, I think it just speaks to, you know, what are the stories being told out there? And you know, where are those opportunities? I'm happy to take them. I remember, you know, in the process of casting this, wanting to be, you know, wanting to be conscious of the fact that this is such a culturally specific piece of work, especially after getting to read the play before auditioning. And I remember reaching out and saying, is it appropriate for me to audition for this role? And we kind of had that conversation, and about Daniel specifically, given that he kind of exists kind of in this weird, he's in reality, he's out of reality. And so there's, and I felt honored to be a part of it. And I wanted to make sure that with anything that we did and anything that we were exploring, to be as reading up as much as I could about, all the material that was provided, all of the dramaturgy, all of the historical context, so that, I felt that I was, doing justice to the culturally specific things that we were exploring.
Yeah, you both did a great job. And I will just say that at Golden Thread, we let cultural competency be our guide in casting, and not so much looks, because I think the politics of casting in the United States, it's funny because we don't think about theater in the US as a political game, but it is a political game, right?
Yeah.
There's politics of casting, politics of what gets produced, what stories are told, who gets to tell them, and how we're represented. And we are, like I said, for us, it's really about cultural competency and an actor's ability to do justice to the character's experience, is how we make our selections. Naghmeh,
I love that word, Toraj, by the way, cultural competency. That term of like cultural competency is so great lens to look at theater. As you said, what's produced, who gets to be in it, who tells. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because there are artists who are, from the culture, don't identify as that culture, don't know anything about it. So I don't really see the point of like casting them in a part that they don't connect with or do justice to, So, Naghmeh, how is casting in Iran? Is it difficult, or do you have an abundance of talented actors of all kinds?
Actually, there are many talented actors, because there are actually many private classes along with theater faculties in Iran, and you can find many educated actors and actresses come from these private institutes or universities, faculties, schools. So there are many of them, and mostly are young. Sometimes it's not easy to choose in between them because there are many, and most of them are so talented.
And as playwright, do you get involved in casting? Do you have a say, or is it the director mainly?
Actually, I can give them my suggestion, and directors always try to listen to me. Sometimes I say that, okay, I wrote this character specifically for this actor. But sometimes, and of course, they really try to find her or him and bring her to the product. But the other times I just say that, okay, that is the features of the actor or actress I was thinking when I was writing the play.
The look.
So yeah. So actually, I always are asked to give some advices about the cast, and that's very interesting, very important, I think.
One of the things I noticed in theater production in Tehran was that they rarely hold auditions. Okay. They just go to the actors and invite them to join the production.
Yeah, that is not true. yeah, that is very true, but it's mostly for professionals. Professional actors never attending any audition. They feel that they don't need this, or they feel that it's not fair after years working to be chosen. Okay, so it's not very true about young actors who are not very famous. Yeah, and
famous.
they are not famous. I mean, being famous is more important than having experience. It's unfair, of course, but that is the reality. Yeah, but I mean, nowadays it's more, you can find more audition for young.
Really?
Yeah. It's more, but it's still not for professionals and not for kind of superstar actors.
Yeah, I made that mistake a couple of times. I asked, a couple of actors who, I don't know, they thought they were above auditioning. I asked them to attend our audition and they were very offended.
Exactly. I can imagine. That is true.
Yeah.
And Tehran John, if we have time, I would like have a just very quick question
Yes,
of you.
Please. Of course.
Why did you choose this text? It's a very general question.
I mean, it's what I said at our, at that coffee shop in Seattle. So 2020 is an election year. This administration had been increasingly attacking Iran and vilifying Iran, and I was afraid that Iran was going to become a ploy on the road to the election. And I wanted, as our fall production, to stage an Iranian play that featured everyday, contemporary, accessible, lovable Iranian characters. And your play was it. It was about an issue, divorce, that everyone can relate to, and a contemporary couple that is just dealing with marriage challenges. Both of them are interesting and layered and complex. Neither is a terrorist or an oppressed silent woman. And they're both professionals and they have ambitions and they have inner emotional lives. And it may sound simple or minimal, but it's a huge thing, right? Because representation, I mean, oh my God, every time Iran is mentioned in the news is in the context of, bullying and political violence, and you never, I can't even remember the last time I heard about Iran in a positive way on the media. I don't know. Do you guys remember maybe what's his name's trip to Iran? Anthony Bourdain's trip to Iran. When was that? In the 90s? Or I don't even know when that was. But
that's like late 2000s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like that was the last time that I think Iran was represented in any meaningful way. And it's scary. It's scary because people don't know anything about the country. And the US is in a position to really force violence on Iran, and it's scary. It's scary to me.
Yeah, I remember
part of also one of the sorry Abe, just like the US, not that there is this lack of understanding or familiarity with the actual context of the country, but also the youth. Most of Iran is like young people, and what they're thinking, what their lives are, how, and one thing I really appreciated about the script here is like, this is just a regular couple with all their issues that are happening, and it happens to be the stories of Iran, and you really connect with them because it's about a relationship ultimately that goes through all of these. So I think that was one of the unique aspects of this, just introducing the youth of Iran and their problems and their issues. Sorry, Abe, go ahead.
No. Yeah, because I'm just to piggyback on what you're saying is, yeah, I mean, I really like how this piece kind of, you know, shows a everyday couple, and that we did it without like accents, for example, you know, which I'm glad is now becoming more prevalent in theater and you know, another medium. But yeah, just so an American audience can connect with them, you know, because it's very easy when you put on the news and you see that it's always doom and gloom and you know, I mean, I thought maybe we were going to go to war, especially when Trump bombed,
Yeah.
you know, and killed that general. I was very scared, you know.
Yeah.
But that's a very easy way to dehumanize the people of Iran, right? That they're, you know, that I don't, you know, they don't deal with anything except war. So maybe we should just go and start a war there, you know. So
yeah, or that the government is so violent and corrupt and whatever that people would welcome
right.
U.S. interference or invasion, you know, and it's whatever the problems are, it's their problem. Let them, you know, solve it. I mean, from my perspective, for those of us living in the U.S., I feel like our lives have been so politicized, and our representation of our communities is really been narrowed down to like victim villain representations. So in that environment, I think depicting everyday life is the most revolutionary act, you know. Depicting everyday relationships, human relationships, is really the most revolutionary act. So that was my goal and my hope, and I think we did it.
I think so.
Naghmeh, we only have just a few minutes left in our conversation, which has been so enjoyable. Anything you want to add, or something we didn't ask you?
Actually, what I forget is to appreciate your great job, all of you. I love the way you made my play alive in radio. I can't say on stage. So it was so fantastic. I really enjoyed, and I found something new in my play through your performances. So thank you, all of you. Thank you, Toran John. And I love that expression of you when you say that showing the very normal life is a normal life in a countries like Iran is very revolutionary act. I love this idea. I agree 100%. And I also really like what Abe said, that how we are being dehumanized, and we need to do something against that to show how we are human being like other people all over the world. We have theater, we have a cinema, we play music, we are just normal people. And I think the first step is stopping violence against any culture is to show that they are human being. You know, so that is, I think, the first step. So I really appreciate your great job, and I I hope you can continue this way to show Iranian normal life with its own challenges and its own, features. And the other thing I would like is that still I am fantasizing a day that you can perform this play on the stage. I agree with Sam that performing on the stage is something else anyway, full of energy and full of movement. So I love this radio play and waiting for having you on the stage.
Thank you.
I plus one on that.
Yes. Yeah, and we want to thank you for your beautiful play and your amazing work. We would love to see more and more of you and produce more and more of your plays, including The Language of Wild Berries on stage. To wrap up, I want to thank everybody that participated in our conversation. I also want to thank Wendy and Chris, who are working back behind, I don't know, digital sphere. And we want to thank HowlRound for live streaming this conversation. Once again, we are Golden Thread Productions. We are the first American theater company focused on the Middle East. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary. We are bringing our digital content programming to everyone for free. If you are able to, please go to our website, goldenthread.org, and make a donation to our company. Thank you so much for joining us, and join us in 2 weeks for another conversation, this time with 4 playwrights of Arab heritage. Thank you so much and have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you, Naghmeh Jan. Thank you, Abe, Sal.